One of the most important things you can do for your dynasty roster during this summer and during the offseason is make sure that you're approaching waivers the right way. A lot of times we treat waivers in the offseason like, okay, I got to get this rookie that we missed on the draft. We got to get this rookie, got to get this rookie. Believe it or not, there are some players that are not rookies that are on your waivers in your dynasty leagues that if you add them to your team today, or maybe when your waivers run, I don't know when that is, you're probably going to be happy you did it, at least because you know you're giving yourself a solid shot at getting a small value win, or in some cases, in these guys' cases, a fairly big value win. Because even if these guys get a little bit of value, you're going to return a lot of investment on. So let's
irrelevance to relevance, basically.
It is essentially what it is, because we're talking about guys with like 50% or less waiver claims. So let's start at the top. I love me when I'm talking about waivers, especially before training camp. I love me some Kansas City Andy Reid running backs, because and why do I love this? Because year after year after year, we have seen examples of running backs in Andy Reid's offense who were no names, who were not even on anybody's radar. But because the Chiefs draft based on talent, based on fit, they are, odds are, going to use some of their young running backs in one way or another. The perfect example of this is Isaiah Pacheco. He was a waiver level guy that got hype in training camp. It was rumored he was getting some starting snaps from CEH, and then boom. Right? And so who are the guys this year? The rugby player, who we just watched his highlights before we started recording
Rees-Zammit. And no, we are not going to read off the rugby stats for you.
No, because I was watching the rugby highlights and I was like, oh, you can kick it? And so I have no idea how that works. But I do know that there was a lot of hype around his signing. And this is not, hey, pick him up because there's hype around his signing. This is because he's a warm running back in that room, and I want my hands on all of the running backs in that room that are in my waivers or on my waivers in my dynasty leagues. And the other guy there is Amani Bailey, who actually is a rookie, but he's a guy that, again, plays in a system where they will give young, inexperienced, low draft capital backs opportunities to be on the field. And the opportunity is all I care about, because I can pick these guys up. And again, this is assuming you have roster spots. And a lot of people talk, I want to kind of address this even a little bit. I should be looking at this camera. I wanted to address this a little bit. A lot of people talk about the value of a roster spot, and it's like, oh, a roster spot is more valuable than X. A roster spot is more valuable than Y. I'm not going to lie. I'm pretty analytical. I'm a pretty analytical person. I studied math in college. I have no freaking idea how an empty roster spot is more valuable than just picking up one of these guys.
No.
It doesn't make any sense to me. I'd like to think that there is a very good reason behind why people subscribe to that method of thinking. But it doesn't cost anything to drop somebody and pick these guys up, or it doesn't cost anything for you to drop these guys and pick somebody else up. So I don't understand why there's an advantage to having an open roster spot. I want to take shots on these guys. I want these guys to be in my roster when Kansas City does their training camp. Because the second I hear, oh, Amani Bailey was working with the first team, oh, blah, 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 Pacheco truthers are going to get mad I said that. But it's the second you hear that, biggest 30-day riser, keep trade cut, Amani Bailey. And you know it happens every year. Basically, we're trying to take, like, these are not even guided dart throws. These are
shots in the dark.
These are
not really, not shots in the dark.
No, these are like throwing a dart into a chasm, like
throwing a dart in the dark.
But the Chiefs running backs are a prime example of somebody that I want to take shots on, just given the history of that coaching regime. And I said regime. That coaching regime and given the history of that system and running backs in that system as well.
Well, yeah, running backs in general, like you are going to see a trend here, and that is running backs, because with running backs being the most volatile position and there being so many injuries and just so much variance across the NFL, there is often an opportunity for one of these guys to rise up the ranks pretty quickly. And Chris Rodriguez, in my opinion, is no exception. Chris Rodriguez was, again, kind of a training camp darling last year, someone that a lot of people in the Dynasty community were whispering about, right? Where, hey, he might have an avenue to be successful in Washington. Washington ended up being a dumpster fire. They passed it a lot with Sam Howell, and they didn't win a lot of games. And Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson got a lot of the opportunity there. Now Gibson's gone, Eckler's in, B-Rob is still doing his thing. At this point, we know what Brian Robinson is, okay? He's probably capped out from a production perspective what he did in 2023, okay? So let's assume that B-Rob is going to be kind of your low-end running back too from a production perspective, getting, a majority of the carries. And then Austin Eckler, a complete wild card. I, for one, am big on investing in Austin Eckler since he's essentially free in the 14th round, but I am not one to deny that there is incredible floor very, very low floor with Austin Eckler. I mean, he could do absolutely
You mean like
nothing
he
this
sucked
year.
last year?
He sucked last year and he couldn't move. He lost all of his juice, and I understand he struggled with an ankle injury. That's why I'm investing in him in the 14th round. But he could absolutely bust. And who's the next man up behind Austin Eckler? Who's one injury away from being the second option and maybe even eventually the first if he really has some juice and ends up being successful with his first or second opportunity in the NFL? Chris Rodriguez. He's the third guy in that depth chart. I mean, I'm looking at Washington's depth chart. Past Rodriguez is Jeremy McNichols, Austin Jones, and Michael Wiley. Like, okay, cool. I'll take a shot on Rodriguez, who at Kentucky had 1,300 rushing yards in 2021 and 900 rushing yards in 2022 with a decent amount of volume. Now, the big thing and the one thing that's a bummer and why Chris Rodriguez is a guy that you can get off of waivers pretty comfortably is he doesn't have any receiving upside to really bolster that rushing production. So, I mean, ideally, you would have to be an injury away from with Brian Robinson for Chris Rodriguez to get a significant amount of carries and opportunity in that offense. But this is the game we play. And if you've got a roster spot, the last roster spot available on your team, or even or your future value team, and you've got a bunch of rookies that are dumped on your taxi that you're just having sit there for a while, which opens up starting roster spots, go get Chris Rodriguez. Like, why not? It's one of the non-dominant running rooms in the NFL where really anyone can come in there and be successful. We just saw, again, we keep bringing up Zamir White because he's like the poster child for a guy that increases in value. The reason we bring him up is because he's the most recent example of this, and he's a guy that isn't really special compared to any other guy that was drafted in his range, has that draft capital, and has increased in value eventually. Like, Chris Rodriguez could be that guy this year. Zamir White came behind Josh Jacobs, who was coming off one of the most dominant years ever. And it took 2 games for him to increase in value. Yep. We're asking for a game, 2 games for this same thing to happen that we said with the Chiefs backfield with Chris Rodriguez.
Parker Washington, kind of the same thing here. Parker Washington is a guy that, you know, when you look at the wide receivers in Jacksonville, Christian Kirk, Brian Thomas, and Gabe Davis. Mm-hmm. So I don't think Parker Washington's a guy that's going to be starting there. Go to his sleeper profile, search Parker Washington. What's the very first thing you see? Latest news, Parker Washington stands out during OTAs. Parker has been impressive
he was the only one there.
This spring. Right. Has been impressive this spring, is well on his way to earning a roster spot. Like, okay. As soon as he gets any like relevant hype, Parker Washington's going to be worth something. But relevant, I think, is not super far off the table here, because when you're looking at what he was able to do at the end of last year, he didn't really play at all the first 12 weeks. And then after that, in week 13, he played 60% of snaps. He had 6 catches. He had a touchdown. He also had 2 rushes, kick returns there for 51 yards.
So you know what's really interesting about that game where he had all that production?
Shvat.
Was when Christian Kirk was out, and he was drafted. One of his pro comps that a lot of people way smarter than us had was Christian Kirk. And he went in and filled that Christian Kirk role, and you almost forgot where Christian Kirk was in that Cincinnati game. Which was just an interesting note that, like, even beyond this year, if Christian Kirk leaves in free agency, which is very, very possible given the new Trevor Lawrence contract and them drafting Brian Thomas, Parker Washington could be the next man up that takes that role if he has success this year.
And you saw that he had 3 targets, 6 targets, 4 targets in some of the other games that Christian Kirk was out. But although not fantasy productive, you could make the argument. But with that being the case, Parker Washington is a guy that is, I mean, one injury away is maybe not even appropriate. He might even be like a beat Gabe Davis out away. How hard is that? I mean, Gabe Davis is a good football player, but he's nothing that's like unbeatable, right? We don't know what Brian Thomas is. The other guys there, Devin Duvernay, I think he's going to beat Devin Duvernay out for a spot on the roster.
Even if he doesn't beat out a guy like Gabe Davis is what he is, and that's a field stretcher. He can line up on the outside and not impact whether Parker Washington is on the field or not, because they just play different roles too. Right. So I think Duvernay's the guy to beat out, honestly.
Well, and I think he will beat out Duvernay.
Yeah, I agree.
Duvernay hasn't done anything of substance for the most part outside of that really hot stretch he had, which I think was 2 years ago. But he was the wide receiver 58 2 years ago and had a good stretch where he was, getting quite a bit of fantasy points at the beginning of 2022. But outside of that, Devin Duvernay hasn't done anything. Parker Washington's only 22 years old. Parker Washington, he's 5'10", 212. He played at Penn State. He came out, he was a fairly good prospect. And now, he's somebody that, because of the situation, because of his pedigree, he's really only being rostered in 47% of dynasty leagues on Sleeper. Meaning, he's a guy that I'm having on my rosters as a dart throw for sure.
Yes, so absolutely.
And I feel really comfortable telling you guys, look, just take a shot on him. If you still got him on your taxi, leave him on your taxi, depending on how deep your taxi is. But Parker Washington is somebody I think you should be going and getting.
Yeah, Colby Parkinson is going to be the next guy that we have here. He is now the tight end, in our opinion, the tight end one in LA. That's the LA Rams, not the LA Chargers. LAR, not LAC.
I know I said La.
Oh, well, I added the R for you. So, so there you go.
I'm cool with it.
Colby Parkinson is still only 25 years old, and he has he's been in the league for like 4 or 5 years, which is crazy. He signed a 3. This kind of came out of left field too. There were, still some people out there, some, pro scouts out there that were, whispering about Colby Parkinson. This could be his breakout year. This could be his breakout year. We've been hearing it for the last 2 to 3 years, and he's done absolutely nothing of substance because Seattle isn't super tight end friendly, at least that we've seen in quite a while.
They weren't.
And he comes out of nowhere and signs a 3-year, $22.5 million contract with the Rams. $15.5 million guaranteed. Doesn't have it out until 2025. So it almost looks like a running back contract. But the interesting thing with Parkinson is Tyler Higbee up until this point has really been the guy. Like if you're fading the tight end position, Tyler Higbee's the one that you take a shot on.
Absolutely.
After the 16th round.
I won Dynasty championships with him.
Yes.
I did.
You could have easily won Dynasty championships with Tyler Higbee. Now I think it's Colby Parkinson.
Ooh.
I think he's with the financial investment and what he was able to showcase in flashes in Seattle, despite having limited snap share, to me was enough to be excited about what he could do. Like the games that he did have production last year were the ones where he had touchdowns and opportunities in the red zone. So that checks off a box. Okay, he can be utilized as a target, as a threat in the red zone. He has a good, one of the best passers in the league in Matt Stafford. And you have a history of mediocre level tight ends that can help you get to a dynasty championship. So you don't have to invest in an elite tight end, and you can go get a guy like Parkinson, who was previously Higbee, in the later rounds and just ride with him and be comfortable. Be absolutely comfortable. It's as simple as that for me. There are only 6 elite producing tight ends in Dynasty Fantasy Football that really put you at a competitive advantage over your league mates. 7 to 32, I do not care who you have. I don't. And Colby Parkinson is cheap as heck. Would you rather spend a 10th round pick on Pat Freiermuth or a 20th round pick on Colby Parkinson? 25th round pick on Colby Parkinson. He falls that far sometimes.
That's not even a question for me.
No, it's not a question. It's Parkinson.
He's rostered in 55% of leagues right now. Not to mention there were 2 games last year where he played over 50% of snaps, and they were the last 2 games of the season, and he averaged 12 points per game in those games.
Yep.
So that's what I'm saying with Colby Parkinson. I think he's kind of a steal right now. Honestly, he might be the biggest steal on this list, in my opinion.
Yep.
But let's talk about Dillon Johnson. Dillon Johnson played at Washington, was a guy that did not get drafted. He was on some people's radars as a rookie coming into the NFL this year, and ended up signing an undrafted free agent deal with the Tennessee Titans. Obviously, the Titans going out and selecting Tony Pollard as their lead back, or some people would say backup, but I think Nathan and I are going with lead. And then also Tyjae Spears and Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears. They do a lot of the same things. So there's a couple different there's a couple different layers to this. Those guys do a lot of the same things. And I think when you're looking at the running back 3 situation in Tennessee, Julius Chestnut is there, Hassan Haskins is there. We all remember Haskins, we all remember Chestnut. In my opinion, I think Dillon Johnson's better than those guys. And I think if anybody's going to be the running back 3 on that team, it's going to be Dillon Johnson. He's 23 years old, he's 5'11", 217 pounds. This is another guy similar to Chris Rodriguez, where if something were to happen to one of Tony Pollard or Tyjae Spears, I think there's a very good chance you see him getting short yardage in red zone situations.
There's a good chance that he still could get that, just because, like you said, the skill set of Pollard and Tyjae Spears almost seems a little redundant. Pollard's bigger.
The overlap is very noticeable.
Yes.
In my opinion.
Yes.
Like, I mean, Tony Pollard, when you look at how Tony Pollard scores best, it's usually on breakaway runs, right? Yep. With Tyjae, like Tyjae's definitely not a guy that you're going to give it to in the red zone. And he's going to
change of pace guy, like which is exactly a compliment
what
to
Tony
his skills.
Pollard
like
was.
It's a compliment to him.
That's exactly how we labeled Pollard when he was playing with Ezekiel Elliott.
I know.
So I don't know. Part of me questions the fit.
That's a big reason. Is part of me, we don't know.
I mean, you're talking about a team that has been running Derrick Henry in the red zone for the past 10 years, like.
And the offense is going to look different. Like the offense will look completely different.
But in terms of, can Dillon Johnson have a role in this team? I think he could. And
can he get some training camp hype? 100%.
Absolutely. Could he get cut? Yeah.
Yeah.
He could. But again, you're talking about you're talking about waiver wire level player. He's only rostered in 36% of leagues right now. I think he's a guy that, especially if I have an open taxi spot, it's like if I don't have that many rookies and I got waiver, and even if I'm a contending team, he's a guy on a contending team. I'm like, yeah, why not? Why not throw him on my taxi? Mm-hmm. So I feel pretty comfortable right now just going in and spending a waiver claim on him. Probably not spending a ton of money on him if you do bidding, but make sure you spend a little bit and go get him. And obviously, it all comes down to roster construction. We really, really enjoy helping you guys with that. You guys can get a team blueprint, which is a customized, personalized review of your Dynasty team that comes in the form of a blueprint, but it also comes with Nathan and I's one-on-one advice when you are a domain mother flocker using code domain at flockfantasy.com. Again, if you're an annual mother flocker with code domain, you get one of these free. You can also buy any of these whenever you want. The link is in the description to sign up for the membership, and you also get the trade calculator, you get the My Teams, you get the rankings, you get our articles, you get our ADP database that we create every month, and a ton of new stuff coming to the site. So that's going to be really, really awesome. Like I said, use code domain, you get one of these for free. We can tell you who to move, we can tell you who to invest in, we can tell you what moves we want you to make, and tell you what the direction of your team is based on what type of team you have. Flockfantasy.com/domain for the annual membership. And also go down and if you just want to purchase one a la carte. But one more guy here. This is a guy. It's like, do we put him on this list? Do we put him on this list? There's a lot of these.
I'm not going to lie, dude. I almost laughed out loud when I was looking over the Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver depth chart here. You've got George Pickens, Roman Wilson, third round wide receiver, who's again entirely unproven. Marquez Callaway, Calvin Austin, Scotty Miller, Des Fitzpatrick, Jacob Copeland, Deuce Watts, and Jared Jenkins.
Van Jefferson and Quez Watkins too.
Dude, that is a cesspool of below average wide receivers that are one-trick ponies. I mean, you're talking about...
How dare you talk about Jacob Copeland like that?
I know, I'm so sorry. Calvin Austin, I am not kidding. Calvin Austin has the potential to be the second option in Pittsburgh's offense.
Correct.
How much is that saying in an offense that is, in theory, as depleted as the Pittsburgh Steelers? That's not saying a lot. But from an optics perspective, in the eyes of the Dynasty community, when they see number 2 wide receiver, what happens? He skyrockets up boards. We see it every single year. So this is just the game we're playing. If you want to take a shot on Roman Wilson, that's fine. I think there are really, really good shots to be taken, and Roman Wilson is one of those guys, honestly, in this year's rookie class, because, again, it is pretty wide open, and I don't really believe in George Pickens, the alpha talent that everyone's making him out to be. But Calvin Austin, who has, again, 2 years experience, hasn't really done a ton with it, but has shown an ability to do something. And I mean, he didn't play at all in 2022 because I believe he was injured. Yep. And then 2023 was just a dumpster fire. Like, can you blame him for not doing anything? No one could do anything. Deontay Johnson, one of the best route runners in the NFL, couldn't do anything.
Didn't do anything.
George Pickens came on at the end of the season. Okay, good for him. Because Mason Rudolph had a stretch of like 2 games where he was cool. I've never been a Calvin Austin truther. I've never been a let's take a shot on Calvin Austin like everyone has been for the last 2 years. But his value has never been lower than it has.
And the opportunities.
And the opportunity, again, how amazing is the opportunity? It's nothing incredible. If he ends up being the second guy, what does he do from a production perspective at the end of the year? He's probably a low-end wide receiver 4, tops. But I don't care. I don't care because it is a small value win if he produces in any way and ends up being the second option there, which, again, he has the upside to do.
I mean, we're talking about a guy that weighs $160. Like, there's a reason he's on your waivers. But again, who else is there? And that's the case with a lot of these guys.
Please don't rant to us in the comments about Van Jefferson. Like, please.
That's why a lot of times, like when we get
Callaway,
late in a startup drafts, like we recommend people take backup quarterbacks who are one injury away. One injury away is a big concept in Dynasty that when people kind of wrap their minds around that, I think that they're going to end up getting a lot of little small firecracker value wins here and there because like, oh yeah, he's starting now. How about that? Even for a week, you can end up getting some good value for guys like that in the middle of the season. So let us know if you like this video. Obviously, there's nothing to talk about right now, but I'm like, you know what? Waivers is happening.
This was good to talk about because, again, you can see the avenues for these guys even before the season starts.
I know, even before training camp starts.
Increase. I mean, can you just perfectly envision like Calvin Austin is the guy behind George Pickens in the Pittsburgh Steelers offense? He is by far and away the guy.
I mean,
I could easily see that.
I'm telling you, I'm going to call you the day that I get the sleeper alert about one of these Kansas City running backs. I'm like, there we go. Yep. There it is.
It's going to happen.
Make sure, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like on the video. And if you play Dynasty, make sure you subscribe. We're trying to get to 15K by the first game of the NFL season. I think we can do it. We're at 13.5. I'm doing some quick maths. We should be good, but you can help us out by doing those two things. And if you enjoyed the video, please drop a like I said. Flockfantasy.com/domain. Use code domain to get your free blueprint and to get all the tools we use to play in our Dynasty leagues. So we appreciate you guys. We'll see you later.